this is Mike. Welcome to the shop. Today we have two Hatsan 130Ss that came in. There's an Alejandro Martinez out there from Texas, aka Alex, who reached out to me to go through these guns to make sure that they were decent guns to start with. Now, one actually had an oversized barrel, so we sent that back. We got a new one, and that barrel was a good barrel. Now, the other gun, we took it a step further and we reached out to Todd Sayers to grab a TJ barrel. We put a 16-inch barrel on order. We finally got it in and we got it installed on the gun. So this is really going in the right direction here. Now, also, we're not just stopping there. He wanted me to rebuild the gas rams. That's what we typically do, but he wanted me to also convert them to a Springer. So for that, I got new parts for the Springer parts, and I reached out to Vortec Land, Tom over there at Vortec Products, and we have two 142 wire springs and two 148 wire springs. Probably ain't going to be much of a difference, but we're going to find out. And we're going to just see what gives us what. It's kind of like a let's just see what happens deal. Meanwhile, we're going to start out with the rebuilt gas ram. Wound up filling them to 160 bar fill. Now, normally I fill them to 150. You don't need more than 150 if everything in the gun is the way it's supposed to be. Otherwise, you're just adding extra recoil, if you will, or piston slam. 150, believe me, will get the job done, and you should get your feet per seconds if everything is where it needs to be. But I went to 160. It was by accident. It really does not make much of a difference, but it does, just a wee bit. So there it is in a nutshell, what we're doing. I got you all caught up, and oddly enough for me, I wound up rounding into this FX30 cal barrel that I saw. This is the Smooth Twist Generation 1. I don't know too much about them. I looked up and I found out how they made it with the little bit of lands and groove here at the very end, and the rest of the tube fits the pellet really nice. It doesn't drop through just because it doesn't have lands and grooves. No, it's made properly. It fits the pellet until the pellet hits that lands and grooves up there, and man, you really got to start pushing it through when it does. But at any rate, the pellet's not torn up. Everything is beautiful. This is going to go on a Hatsan 135 as well, and it's going to be mine. So that's going to be interesting to see how that turns out down the road. But meanwhile, this is where we are. We're heading in the right direction and everything's looking good. Now, I can't share everything, obviously, but what I share, I'm sharing with you, and that's it. Now, I do want to say thanks to Corey McCann. He works with Tom over there at Vortec Land. He sent me this nice shirt. Springers are not dead. Absolutely, you bet. You got to start out with a Springer, and the guys who like the mechanical things feel about the Springers, who normally are kind of mechanically inclined, tend to like their Springers because it's mechanical and they feel connected to the gun. Now, any gun, I don't care what it is, has to be fine-tuned or honed in, and that includes a Springer. Otherwise, you got something that's not honed in and it's not quite performing the way it should. But anyway, we take these Hatsans 130s, 125s, whatever you have, snipers, and we hone them in with our custom parts and everything else that we do, and that is the big game changer. Well, thanks for hanging out. We'll see you on the next clip. Let's get started. .558. .572.9. Now remember, it's a cool basement and the elevation's 3,100 feet above sea level. I tend to lose 40 feet per second sometimes. 565. .566. So let's go throw the numbers over to Crony, see what we get. Now again, this has the 142 wire, all the custom parts, custom spring guide. Everything else is is, you know, factory shroud 10.5-inch barrel. Now this was a good barrel, wasn't the greatest. It cannot compare to a TJ barrel, especially coming in at 16 inches. So here we go. Now the basement's cold. This is the first cold shot, 544.3. And my elevation 3,100 feet. I will reiterate, I tend to lose a good bit of feet per second compared to you guys over there on the East Coast. 549.6. Now we got to shoot some, see if we can get this gun to warm up a little bit. Things change after you start shooting. They change when you go out in the sun. Temperature causes change. I don't care who tested what for what. Your feet per second will change as the elevation of your temperature changes. I should say rise or fall. 553.5. All this crony shots for all this stuff is making the film run long. I will say also these thumbhole stocks are very comfortable, easy to grab and shoulder. 541.7. The gun's very consistent. I want to see if I can at least get to 550. The TJ barrel is giving us like 565 to 570. 548. We'll do one more. And then we'll get set up. I believe that's good. I want to make sure the gun barrel block is in the picture there. Okay, we can zoom in a wee bit more. Let's see. That's good. All right, now I can tell you the 142 wire is easier to cock than the 160 bar filled gas ram. And I just cocked this with one hand, broke it open and cocked it with one hand. This is the Vortex 142 wire. Now remember, I told you that the 160 bar over the 150 bar isn't much of a difference. But the gas ram is definitely unique than a spring. All right, here we go. So that's 563.3. Now the guns, this is like the second shot out of here. The basement's cool, and again, elevation's 3,100 feet above sea level. .6. This drives me crazy when that shroud turns on me. .73.6. Now, so shooting the gun, it has to warm up a little bit, and that changes things, or it could be the pellet fit. All these little things are variables. Elevation, whole 9 yards. So, all right, so far the cocking is easier. That's confirmed. Compared to gas ram right now with a 142 wire, 569.5. Let me do another. All right, well here we're going to do our little moderator test. We have the Donnie Fat Boy installed. So we're going to shoot the gun with the moderator on and with the moderator off. There's not much of a difference, but maybe you can hear it and see for yourself. So let's do that. We'll get that out of the way, and then we'll do a little bit more air gun talk. So, with the moderator on, the gun's longer, and you have to be careful of that. All right, now let's be quiet on the set. Are you ready? Here we go. I'll take the moderator off. This thing's made really well. The packaging is nice. Everything about this moderator, he had sent a bunch of them, Alex, is really, really nice. Now, for this particular gun, I made a thread protector, so we're going to put that on. It also will maintain the thrust washer, the crush washer, I should say, not thrust washer. So here we go without the moderator. Now the 142 wire is easy to cock as long as you have that follow through and you're all set up to do it. If you're going to go in it slowly, it's not going to be easy to cock. So all these guns that are powerful like that, you have to have that follow through, and you need to be set up and know how you're going to do it and get used to doing it. All right, now no moderator. Here we go. Just a wee bit louder. Okay, now with that said, let's put this over here. Get that all hunkered down. At this point, this gun is honed in, it's accurate, it's powerful, it's smooth, it's within less than an inch of the bullseye as far as the barrel being lined up with the zeroed out scope. But this factory one that we went through from stem to stern, actually the point of impact is 6 over and 6 down. Now Alex told me he's going to use open sights with this one, so we're going to take the shroud off, open up a can of worms. We're going to bend the barrel in order to shift the point of impact where it needs to be with a zeroed out scope. Then we're going to try to do whatever it takes to get the shroud back without any nonsense going on with. All right, talk about opening up a can of worms. Now we're dealing with the factory gun, and here's our point of impact with the factory gun with a zeroed out scope at 18 yards. Here's our point of aim right here, and you can see 6 over and 6 down with a zeroed out scope. That's our point of impact. I think there's about 4 pellets right here. So we at least have some type of decent accuracy going on. But anyway, let's continue. We got the shroud off because now we're going to bend this barrel to get this thing honed in better than that. And of course, doing that, the shroud, not typically from the factory anymore, the hex part that the adapter from your socket grabs basically isn't there enough to grab it. So you got to know how to take these shrouds off when that happens. Now we're going to bend the barrel, and we went in there to do that. We put a thread protector on the threads, but it was just a little too thin here because of what Hatsan did with the machinery, and it caused the whole thing to fail and snap. Well, lessons learned, and that's just the way it is. Now we have to deal with it. Right? We got this all set up in a lathe. We're using a dog leg, and all this stuff takes time. Then we are getting rid of what's there, and we are preparing to machine the barrel down so we can thread it again. And that's what we're doing right now. May look easy on pictures, but this is all time consuming. And here we are with a new threaded barrel end, and the barrel face and crown is already done now. Here we're heating up a pin for the cock and arm. And pretty much we got the gun honed in where it is. She's accurate now, and then Alex can take it from there. So I'm trying to use the open sights with my eyes at 18 yards, and it's just not going to happen. Yeah, I was able to hit the target, but I can't do it with these eyes. So I brought the target board closer, brought it up to 7 yards, and even then I had a hard time. But at least this tells me the gun's where it needs to be, and Alex can take it from there as far as adjusting everything. Well, here's our last picture on this particular one. We went back and changed the sight to red. Remember, we put that yucky yellow one in there, and I wasn't happy with it. Well, enjoy the film. There's more to come. Thanks for hanging out. Here's our setup and the vise with our barrel. We're going to take that end cap off, and these things can give you a problem. Most likely you're going to mar this up no matter what you do to get that off. It's threaded on there, but sometimes there's installed factory tight in there. That's what it looks like. Here's the inside of the baffles, right? You got 2 of these, you get 2 of these, there's your little O-ring and your threaded cap. Basically, we're going through this gun from stem to stern, and we're pulling the breech seal out as well because we're getting ready to clean the barrel. So we pulled the guts out. Now we're going to clean the barrel, breech seals out. Barrel's only 10.5 inches, so the patches shouldn't be that bad compared to a 17-inch barrel. Here we're checking the height of the breech seal. Now this one's breaking above the barrel block significantly enough, which was surprising me because most of the time I get these guns, I gotta shim that seal. But anyway, that one's doable. So anyway, there's the breech seal. Everything's been brake cleaned and cleaned out and air blown out, and everything's dry. Here's our baffles. We clean those baffles. They're only going to get dirty again anyway, but since they're there and they're in my shop, they're getting cleaned. And we're going through the trigger. Now both of these guns, one of them had trigger sear issues. And this is ideal. You go through the trigger and you check everything, you clean everything, and you adjust everything. The issues with this are the sears. They're just whacked. They weren't smooth, they weren't clean, they had ridges, they were uneven, you name it, these things had it. So here we are taking a sneak peek at the sear edge here. And I think this pictures are out of sequence. This is here, this got gray matter on here, we don't know what this blue stuff is. All that has to be cleaned up. And then here's the part I was trying to tell you about. It's got a ridge here, it's all uneven. This little edgy stuff here, who knows what that is. And basically this is pretty much has never been taken down from the factory. This is actually wider than it needed to be. Now here's some examples. This is what they should have looked like. The original sears used to have this very faint dished out line in this area for the trigger screws, and this has nothing. It has that ridge, and all that bumpiness needs to go. So we're using some of this Autosol metal polish. I have metal polish, and I'm decided to choose this Autosol for the barrel later on. Anyway, we're using it on the sears, we're cleaning up the sears, we're polishing the sears, we're getting everything honed in and ready. Here we got this all nice and smooth to a point where we're happy with it now. And here's our part, we're smoothing it down, it looks better now. Also, we were checking the portholes on these receiver tubes. I saw right away that they were smaller, so I decided to see what they were. They used to be 4 millimeters and sometimes over, but Hatsan reduced these portholes down to 3.15 millimeters. At least one of them read 3.15 millimeters. And there it is there. I don't know if you can see the calipers are on that drill bit, but that's what it measures, 3.15 millimeters, which is good because that means I don't have to reduce that. I've been reducing them down typically 3.5 millimeters. But anyway, there's our airport porthole. Here's the factory results, right, from factory gun, from Pyramid Air when they did their testing. Basically, you got too much factory oil and typical, so your first shot's going to be high. You can hear it coming in at 744. By the time you get to your 10th shot up here and close to it, the numbers are going to drastically drop. Eventually, when you get the gun, the factory oil is going to burn off, your piston seal edge is going to burn off to a degree, and then you're going to have more recoil, and you're going to have feet per second wherever they land, and that's it. That's not going to happen on this gun because of our custom parts. Here's our brown truck coming to the house. Everybody loves that brown truck. But anyway, now we're going to the rebarrel pictures. Here we're just checking out the depth of the barrel into the block. It's a fit up here and it even all the way across, so we are heading in the right direction. These are things you don't get to see. And now I configured the breech seal for this to be higher than typical, and that's because it's easier to take it down rather than try to add it and bring it where you want it. So this is a little high, but that's fine. Well, that's what we purposely set out to do. And also I changed the breech seal. Now typically I will go out of my way to make sure we use the Hatsan breech seal, which is a lot more narrower than this bigger O-ring. But I checked my Air Arms Pro Elite, and that's how Air Arms does these. And also I was talking to Chris Przinski, I think that's how you pronounce his name, from Cap Air Guns, and we were emailing back and forth talking about these breech seals on the Hatsans, and I shared with him how I did mine, and he shared with me how he did his. And again, it lines up with the Pro Elite, so I decided it would be easier to do it this way. My whole intention to stay away from this was for the fact that it's now wider, and I wanted the breech seal to be narrower so there would be less chance of losing air or slipping air. But guess what? It all worked out, and I didn't have a problem, and it was a lot easier. And the nice thing about this with a 30 cal, it makes the nipple thicker rather than thinner, trying to give the Hatsan breech seal the place to seat. So there it is there, and it's proud, and that's okay. We're going to take it down later on and adjust it. Here's the barrel. It's inside a 4-jaw chuck. We are within a thousandth of run out, which is good from the center of the bore. And you know, that's just the way it is. This is stuff that's involved in this. Now, of course, here's Murphy Law. I had to make and stop another chuck key for the 4-jaw chuck. You need 2 chuck keys to work a 4-jaw chuck, and I couldn't find it, so I had to make one. Anyway, here's our finished barrel. It's threaded, and it's chamfered, and it's crown faced. Now, these are TJ barrels. I really like these barrels, guys. I really, really highly recommend them. And Alex, you're gonna love this gun when you get it back. It's gonna be accurate, it's gonna be smooth, it's gonna be powerful. You're really gonna like it. Anyway, there it is there, you know, sticking out, and you know, we ran into some problems. All of a sudden, we have to change stuff. And that's what happens when you're in the middle of doing stuff. Anyway, so let's get through with it. We're just showing some pictures. We've got a lot to cover, so hang on. So here's our autosol. I polished the barrel instead of just throwing it in there and calling it a day. That's not good enough. We're going to clean, and then we're going to polish this barrel. And that's what we did. These are just some of the things on the table. We're thinking about which way we're going to go, but Alex wanted front sight, and then Alex said, well, don't worry about it. If you can't get it, you can't get it. And I said, well, if you want front sight, we will try to get you front sight. Anyway, here's the barrel and the barrel block. At this point, it's curing. Later on, when it's cured, we will mill this out, and then we will mill this out, and then we will make a pin, and that's where the barrel gets pinned later on. Here it's already done. There's your pin, and there's your barrel pivot bolt. And back to our trigger. We are inspecting the sears on this thing, and they were just horrible. So we took care of all this mess. Also cleaning the trigger block out. Everything gets checked and done. Nothing's done in a hurry around here. So we have to clean this all up just to make sure there's nothing, no edgy metal poking around. It's just going through from stem to stern. And there's our piece now, all nice and cleaned up. And actually, this part here I did with a Dremel. I have it on the mill, but we actually did it with the Dremel. Your Dremel is one of your most wanted tools with air guns. This is what this piece actually looked like. That's absolutely horrible. It's not even. So we kind of smoothed it down. And we're checking this part out. Now I also have this metal polish, and I was whipping that out and stirring it up because it's been sitting a while, and then we're using that. Here we have the trigger and a new screw, and we're inspecting it, make sure there's not a crack in it, and we're going to make a new screw and adjust it so we can have the better setup on the trigger. Here we're checking the portholes. Now on these portholes, it is 3.12 millimeters on the other one. The other one was 3.15 millimeters, and that's the variations you get. But it's really good for me to see that they reduced that porthole down from the original 4 millimeters. Here's another shot of that breech seal. Worked out really good. And I actually special ordered these O-rings, so I have them in stock. But anyway, there's our barrel crown threaded. There's a barrel face. And we wound up finding a problem with the cock and slot. This cock and arm was actually getting bound up in the slot because the slot wasn't right. Or it could have been maybe this piece in here, but it looks normal to me. You got to be very careful with your cock and arms, what you do to them. I would advise you to leave this part alone. And so we took the file, and we worked and worked and worked and cleaned this slot up so that we didn't have the binding going on, and we took care of the problem. Which means we had to go back and clean everything out again. And I decided to see how close was the Hatsan porthole that they dropped down to 3.15 millimeters compared to an R1, vintage R1. Well, here's the R1 coming in at 2.9 millimeters. And And also we drilled this out trying to get the bore hole larger, closer to 3.15 millimeters. Inspecting here is the bottom of the air chamber. If you look down, you can see it's been dished out. Okay, now that's okay. We consider that the venturi hole, but everything gets inspected. Sometimes I had to have done that myself because they don't do it. Things get overlooked. But anyway, we're back in action. The conking slot is fixed. We had to go back in there and clean everything back out. And that's just the way it goes with these air guns. And then here we did a little chamfer, a little bit of too much chamfering, but that's all right. It isn't going to hurt. Of the porthole. Here now we are adjusting the breech again to make sure these pellets go in like they're supposed to on the new barrel. And this stuff should not be rushed. You should take your time and even get into chamfering and using your lapping compound to give you what you want. And these pellets go in really nice. The other red tip pellets do not. They're harder, they're bigger, whatever, but you need a tool to help get them in. Now this particular project, I hate to do this to you guys, but this thing kept going and going and going. We shifted gears, so I had to make an extension to go on the original barrel, and that's what you're looking at here. I tried to get rid of these pictures and it just won't work, so just hang in there with me and bear with me of what you would have normally missed. So this is what this looks like. It's a barrel extension, has 4 holes around it. Obviously I am tapping it at this point. It's threaded, and now we are using a lapping compound. The inside diameter is as large as it can get and still be threaded, and then we are lapping it with lapping compound. It has 4 holes here. Now it's going to get screwed onto the barrel. And the whole idea behind this is that now we have a longer extension. Pellet's going to come out of the normal barrel, go through this. Air is going to come out of these 4 holes here. It's going to begin to fill up this area of the tube, and then it's going to filter through these holes, go back into the tube, and out the little hole on the tube that's in the back there. But eventually, I didn't like it, I got rid of it, and we moved into another step of a different direction. But this was just to hold the shroud tube for support, and we had it all together, and I didn't like it, and I changed it again. Sometimes it's the way things go. That's just the way it goes. Here we're just making the end adapter for the end of the shroud, and that's what it looks like. Now this was the first setup with the extension. Like I said, I changed all that. And our Donnie FL moderators came. Alex had ordered some for his guns, and the idea is to check everything, make sure everything is good from stem to stern, and all this stuff would work. These things are made really, really nice. I couldn't not believe the quality of how well they're made. I took it apart, took a look inside, and it was absolutely made very, very nice. It's a 2-inch Fat Boy. And you can see here the front sight is just clearing on a QE shroud. Don't forget, when you rebarrel a gun, you're going to wind up bending a barrel in order to shift the point of impact to line up with your zeroed out scope reticle on your scope. That's what a honed in gun is all about. You're not going to be reaching for your reticles and adjusting dials to swing everything around. When you have the opportunity to shift your barrel for a zeroed out scope. Now, if you're using a scope versus sights, that's a whole different story. But at any rate, when you rebarrel using a scope, then you're going to have a scope set to its 0 reticle. You're going to shift the barrel so they both line up at the point of impact, or very close to it. But at any rate, Alex wanted one gun with open sights, and that's the factory. The rebarrel one is honed in with a scope. Here's our typical feet per second, 44.74 grain, 75 grain, whatever they were, 566.6 and 566.2 is what we were getting. High elevation here is 3,100 feet, so Alex is in Texas. He's going to get a lot more feet per second. He's in a lower elevation than I am. And along the way, I wound up buying an FX Smooth Twist Generation 1 barrel. I checked the pellet to bore fit on that. It's a 30 cal, and boy, you know what? It's made properly. The pellet fits the tube. And then when the pellet gets all the way down here, it hits the lancing grooves and it bites in, and you can feel it, and you really got to push it through. But I think I changed my mind. I don't think I'm going to have a 30 cal Hatsan 135. I think I'll leave that for somebody else who wants a 30 cal. Anyway, here's some of the things you didn't get to see we got our 2 sets of springs, the 148 wire and the 142 wire. The gas rims are rebuilt. Now this is the tool that I use. It's basically a push rod for those red pointed pellets. They just are harder to get in, and you need something to help get them in. The other pellets have no problem. And there's our spring guides there. I'll turn this a little bit. You can see now here on these, because they're powerful and strong springs, I decided to use a metal friction washer rather than a Delrin washer. So there's the choice. Here you go again with the 142 and the 148 wire. These are different things I had to make to get this project through to where we had to go. And here's our 2 guns. Now this has changed, okay, and you're seeing it ahead of time, but that's no longer there. Here's our top hats. Now I want to say one thing about these Hatsan rifles. I want to tell you right now, they are not made to go in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. They are not made for that. They're not high-end German guns, and that's all we did with this project, with all the different power plants. This project was something else. And they are not made for that. You can't do that with these guns. Now you have the trigger to deal with and all these pins, and then you got this guy here. Normally if that's not on tight enough, the next time you go to take it apart, the stock bolt's going to pull this out of the receiver. Now it's going to be sandwiched between the stock, and then you're going to have to put a pair of vice grips on it, just like I did here, in order to get it off. And these guns are a pain to work on. And the pins are not designed to be putting on, taking off, putting on, taking off, putting on, taking off. They get edgy, the metal wears down. You got all these pieces that you set up, you tune, you lube, and all you do is keep going through them all the time, redoing, undoing, redoing, undoing, and it's not made for that. But I did that. Yes, I know this is disconnected here. It's fine. All right, let's see. Now, here's another thing. You got to put your stock on. You see these trigger pins off the Quadro. They have to be just right, or your stock's not going to clear. It's going to be hitting. And most guys are going to be trying to put this on, and they're going to be trying to force something because they don't know what's going on. So the best thing to do is take your trigger guard off so you can see what's going on. And because it's a synthetic stock, you'll find out that basically, you know, you're going to have to put that on an angle. Here are the 2 end plugs, right? We are converting to a Springer. You need these end plugs. And of course, one's going to be different than the other because, well, that's the way it is from the Hatsan world. And they don't fit. This one fit fine. The next one doesn't. So we had to take care of that so it would fit. This is the stuff you run into. And here's your typical bolt. Does not line up in the center. You can't get your nut and washer on right. So you got to lift the back end towards the butt all the way up, back off the trigger. So this lines up the center to get that on. Then you got to lower it back down, and your trigger pins have to clear. Are you feeling me now? But anyway, sometimes when your pins wear out because you've taken the gun apart too many times, now it's going to be edgy and it doesn't want to go in. Then you're going to hit it harder, and then it's going to cause this part of the trigger block to bend a little bit, which is going to create a problem. And you got to take it apart and fix it. And fun just never stops. And this is what your pins can look like if you take the guns apart on and on and on too many times. And then you got to clean that up and bevel it off and keep going. And this is what it looks like when it's been beveled. All right, so now if you got a Hatsan, I highly recommend that you use this 2-screw scope stop. It's going to push the scope up further, but it's too bad, so sad. These guns need a 2-screw scope stop. And I highly recommend that you use the one-piece mount with 4 bolt screws on the side plate, okay? And have that all up way into this scope stop. If you go anything different than that, it's not going to usually make the scope rail, and that would be these kind of guys here. I got a bunch of these, and I haven't been able to use them yet on these guns. It pushes the scope so far up that you can't mount the scope on the rail because you run out of the rail. So that's a shame. So you use the 2-screw one you get from Hatsan. Now, typical Hatsan, I had these. I was going to put this on this gun, and rather than put a new filament in there, I like this nice red one. And guess what? They don't fit. I couldn't get them on. They're all cleaned up and they do not fit the dovetail. And that's some of the stuff you run into. Now ask me why that is. It's just the way it is. Be prepared for stuff like that. And here I put the orange one in, and later I took it out because I don't like that orange. We went with the red one. And if you need to do that, it's very easy. You have a soldering iron, you order some filament for that size, and when you cut it, you just heat it up and it mushes the end. And then that's it, you're done. And I got it from the Bullseye people here off of eBay. Anyway, here's the original shroud setup, and our shop foreman here, Scooter, is checking things out. He didn't say nothing, but sometimes I can read his mind. But he did like the Donnie FL moderators. And anyway, this is our extension. This is not the barrel. And at any rate, we wound up changing all that. And here's these 2-screw scope stops that I ordered for these guns. They didn't come with them. Don't ask me why. And Hatsan gave me some pivot bolts I asked for, and they were the wrong ones, of course. Now I found that these things here didn't want to fit because they were too arced up on an arch. So they had to be flattened out with a hammer, and that's just the way it goes. But anyway, here's the original design, and we changed it. But here's some pictures of the point of impact with the barrel being shifted. Now we're pretty close to hitting the dot, if not hitting the dot. See that? These, the poly mags, the red tip ones, they are the ones that are harder to get into the breech, where all the other pellets go in like they're supposed to. I like the poly mags, but I heard they were expensive. Now you can't see it here, but this has now been changed. We'll see if we get another picture of it. There it is. So we took the extension off, we threw it in the trash, all that time and labor for nothing, and we rearranged this, and we tried to salvage what we could. We cut the shroud down and made adapters for it. Everything's good, and now the barrel's been changed for the point of impact shift. We had to do something different with the shroud, and that's what we did. Now it's all working. So I made a thread protector, and the next day I came in the shop, I was looking at it, I was like, you know what, I don't like it. So I got rid of it and I made the gold one. There's pictures with the poly mags. Look at this, boom, 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 they're all touching. Really nice. The Hades were just as accurate, but I think the poly mags had the edge on them. Here's our thread protector, and there's our gun. So we were using the Hades domes, the Hades, and the poly mags. JSBs. Here's some more pictures. So we got it all honed in there. Now it comes down to the shooter. Believe me, guys, you change a whisker at the bench and you're going to change the point of impact. Now, here's something I found out. The Donnie FL moderator was not clipping. That was all checked out thoroughly with the moderator, and it changes the point of impact. It made it shift vertically. I confirmed that. You know, this is airflow and pressure and stuff that happens. Just like when you put a different pellet in there, it'll cause the pellet to shoot the way it wants to shoot, because something's different, and a little bit of difference is all you need, and it'll change. I think that's pretty much it. I don't know, this is the beginning of our other clip, which we already gone over. Well, guys, this is it. It's been a long thing. I hope you've enjoyed this film. There was some stuff that I wanted to share. I know it made the film long. I hope some of you guys enjoyed it. And this is just how it is sometimes here in our shop. And when Alex gets his guns back, I got news for you. He is going to really like them, and they are already on the way. Thanks for hanging out. Take care, and remember, be safe.